Today, I want to invite you along for a journey working on slippery, cambered turns. This is something that I know I need a lot of practice on, especially when I add additional complex problems like roots and rocks and obstacles. This just gets me every time. If you guys are new to Trials Progression, I want to say welcome. My name is Tom Tronto, and I like to help riders get better by breaking down techniques into small, bite-sized drills that they can work on to improve their skills. So I talk a lot about layered foundations and working on different skills as you progress. And you can actually stack those skills on top of each other. And sometimes the hardest lines are the ones with the most things kind of stacked on top of each other. So when I think about something like traction, it actually involves multiple aspects all at once. So when I'm working on traction, the body positioning is going to be extremely important. If your head is dipping in and you're making a turn, your rear end's just going to slip out or you're going to wash the front tire. So body positioning is key. You got to make sure you got smooth throttle control, clutch control, you got to have the right momentum and also balance. These things all kind of stack on top of each other, and we're just talking about getting traction around a turn. Now I'm going to go ahead and add in a whole bunch more. As it relates to stacking these layers and working on individual skills and putting them all together, this has probably got the most that I can think of. You want to make sure the body positioning is correct. I got to make sure my turning, both left and right, are spot on, going downhill, uphill, brake control, front and rear, throttle, and potentially building up RPM before, working on my clutch control, my balance, my line selection, including where the rear tire is going. That rear tire proprioception oftentimes can cause you to go over a rock with your rear tire that you didn't go over with your front, and then boom, you're offline. So I'm going to pause the video right here because initially I was planning on doing a ride-up technique over a rocky obstacle, and I just couldn't handle it. It was so wet and slippery, I couldn't get the momentum, so I'm just going to be focusing on the turn here today. All of those skills are kind of stacked on top of each other like layers, and if one of them, kind of falls apart, the whole thing's just going to crumble. So this is going to be a real challenge, and in all honesty, I'm going to be adding in more sticks and obstacles, especially as I'm making this turn to try and increase the difficulty. If I can't get this, I'm going to take away some of those challenges in order to be successful. This is something that I got from Ray Peters up at the Trials Training Center. He brought a ton of knowledge. I just felt like I was being bombarded with all kinds of great insight. And this stacking up of these kind of incompetency levels or what your strengths are was something that I found really, really interesting. So I've gone back and analyzed my own riding ability and said, okay, what are the things that I need to work on in order to be competitive this year at the advanced line? I feel like for my own journey, my obstacle riding has grown, but it's this stuff that really needs to work. So if this is you and you need to work on as well, hopefully today can add some value to you. I remember being challenged one time by a comment from a YouTuber when I said I wasn't going to go out and ride because it was rainy, and they said, do you think the pros take a day off just because it's raining? And that really shook me, and I honestly need to work when the ground conditions are not full of traction, and so I'm out here riding in the rain, which is something I like to do, but filming it isn't as much fun. You got to try and keep the camera dry, so this is a challenge. The audio doesn't always pick up that clean, but you can see I'm just working on this kind of downhill to uphill turn. Now this is something that might not be very advanced, but when you put boundaries on it, and you're going to see me start to make those boundaries a little bit smaller or bigger depending upon my skill level. I like to try and train inside my skill window, and what I mean by that is if I'm failing over and over again, it's not helping my confidence, and I might not be able to pinpoint what it is that I'm doing that's leading to that failure. So I'm going to back things up, make the space a little bit wider so that I can be successful, and then add in more layers of complexity. So throwing these sticks out here, I'm going to have to work on getting traction around a turn, maybe adjust my tire line, or figure out where to keep my momentum in this turn so I'm not pushed offline. So as you guys can see, these are challenging. If I am trying to give it gas while the rear tire is on roots or sticks, anything that's wet like this, it's just going to spin out, especially if I'm dipping my head to the inside, which is a common occurrence. I want to stay centered over the bike instead of leaning too far in. So that's where that balance piece comes in. So one of the things I'm learning is that while I want to be slow and controlled, if I come to a complete stop and I lose my momentum, it's hard to gain it back without slipping the rear tire. So I want to have a certain speed as I go through this. And that speed is going to be interrupted by some of these logs. Now this bigger log that I'm putting right down here at the front, I had to work through this. If I had not enough momentum with the front tire, I was going to slip. If I didn't have enough with the back, it was going to slip. So I had to maintain momentum and let the wheel roll over both the front and the rear, and then try and make the turn. So this actually turned into kind of 3 different micro skills, if you will. Getting my weight back so I'm not slipping on it with the front tire, so leaning back, a little bit of momentum, and then keeping momentum as the rear tire goes over, and then getting squared up to make this last turn. It was these three different elements that you can see at the end. I was just struggling to continue on this line and make the turn and maintain the momentum. This is a great way to train. This is how trials event organizers like to put things, that there's multiple skills all in a compact manner. Usually before an obstacle, they put a tight turn to see, can you turn and get a position before that big obstacle? I've got this last log kind of in position to simulate an obstacle in order to get momentum, pull that front wheel up as I'm finishing out this turn. So while I couldn't handle a bigger rock obstacle this day just because the conditions were too hard, I did manage to find plenty of things that I struggle with. And it's working on your weakness that's really going to take you to the next level. I am committed in this season to work on turns, to work on cambers and traction, because riding in my yard and on my driveway, I can get away with a lot of stuff that's sloppy. When you take that out into the woods in a more natural environment, this is the stuff that I need to work on. If you guys like these type of workouts, junkyard figure eights is another video I think you're going to find adds a lot of value to your practice.